Incredible moment, Black teen's unexpected heroism saves pregnant millionaire's wife mid-flight. Jamal Johnson scanned the bustling airport, the familiar blend of anxiety and determination flooding his mind. At 17, he carried not just his backpack but the weight of expectations from his mother, a florist who poured her heart into her work to give him a chance at a better life. Every step toward the terminal reminded him of his low-income neighborhood, where dreams often faded before they took flight. He could almost hear the whispers, the way people saw him as just a kid from the wrong side of town, not the brilliant student he aspired to be. As he boarded the plane with his mother, his heart raced. Excitement about the academic competition buzzed in his veins, but a gnawing anxiety overshadowed it. What if he didn't live up to the promise everyone saw in him? What if he failed? Those thoughts hung heavy, like clouds ready to burst at any moment. The flight attendants ushered everyone to their seats, and he fastened his belt, the metal clasp pressing into his gut, mirroring the pressure he felt suffocating him. Suddenly, a scream pierced the cabin, shattering the tense calm. Jamal's eyes darted to the commotion near the front. Abigail Monroe, elegance embodied, was gasping, her face turning a shade of pale that sent a jolt through the air. The atmosphere morphed from buzzing anticipation to frantic chaos as flight attendants rushed past, voices raised and filled with uncertainty. Jamal's thoughts spiraled. This wasn't a test he could prepare for, it was a life-and-death situation. Just a kid, he heard someone mutter. Doubt filled the air, seeping into his resolve. The wealthy first-class passengers exchanged glances of disbelief, as if such things shouldn't happen to someone like her. Jamal clenched his fists, his breath quickening. The dismissive murmurs cut deeper than he anticipated. Could he really help? He hesitated, the voices amplifying his internal conflict. But then he saw Abigail's trembling fingers, the raw fear etched on her face. The burden of self-doubt clouded his mind, but he felt a flicker of determination. Jamal stood, feet moving before his mind could catch up. You're going to be okay, he reassured Abigail, kneeling beside her, their eyes locking in shared urgency. As he steadied her hand, a connection sparked amidst the chaos. He knew he had to act. He took a deep breath, recalling the medical workshops he'd attended, where his advice was wanted, where he felt valued. We need oxygen, and someone should call for help. He called out, his voice firm despite shaking. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as the turbulence rattled the plane, so did internal turmoil clawing at Jamal. Would his knowledge be enough to save her? He was drowning in a sea of anxiety, his hands clammy as he leaned closer to Abigail. He could feel the weight of judgment resting on him. He was just a kid, after all. Yet in this moment, Jamal realized he was more than just a reflection of his upbringing, he was capable. He had to be. Jamal's mind pulsed with conflict, each second stretched into an eternity, the panic rising like the plane itself. Would he prove them all wrong, or would he crumble under the pressure? As Abigail's breathing faltered, and the voices around him began to spiral into panic, Jamal faced not just a desperate situation but a defining moment. Courage surged through him. Would it be enough? The stakes climbed higher as uncertainty loomed, the bond forged in urgency demanded more than he'd ever faced before. Jamal's focus narrowed, honing in on Abigail's face, illuminated by a pale light of urgency. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, he felt responsibility solidify into something tangible. Every ounce of self-doubt gave way to an unfamiliar clarity. He was not simply a bystander, he was a key player in this life-and-death scenario. He took a deep breath, dispelling the whirlwind of what-ifs that thrummed in his chest. With instinct pulling him forward, he pivoted to assess the situation around him. The flight attendants' frantic gestures indicated the need for calm amidst chaos. The adults, initially paralyzed by disbelief, were now snapping into motion. They began to gather supplies, but Jamal needed to maintain equilibrium. "Breathe, Abigail. Can you hear me?" he urged gently, hoping to anchor her. Words spilled from him, techniques from the workshops he attended. "I need you to focus on me. You're safe. We're going to get you help," he said, feeling the weight of their exchanges, the urgency shifting from fear to action. Instructing her to stay still, he began to check for signs of distress beyond what his eyes could decode: the uneven rise and fall of her chest, the straining creases of worry etching themselves into her brow. "Can I have some water, please?" he called out gently, keenly aware of the self-assuredness growing inside him, a new awareness of his capabilities burgeoning with every word. A nearby passenger quickly provided a small bottle, and Jamal carefully lifted it to Abigail's lips. "Just a couple of sips," he encouraged her, enforcing an air of steadiness as she struggled to comply. As her breathing steadied, Jamal's heart leaped with hope. This wasn't merely about saving someone, it was about proving to himself that his hard work, that late-night studies, and mobile online courses weren't for naught. This was his chance to mold fears into valor, to become the person he envisioned, a beacon of strength despite the storms surrounding him. The flight attendants returned, armed with an oxygen mask and the authority that calmed the passengers. "We're going to take care of her now," one of them said, a reassuring hand placed on Jamal's shoulder. But instead of retreating into the backdrop, Jamal stood firm, unwilling to relinquish the responsibility he had embraced. "I know what to do. Let me help," he insisted, his voice stronger than he thought possible, rooted in a determination that cast aside the lingering echoes of doubt. It was in that moment of standing up, of not allowing himself to be disregarded as just a kid anymore, that Jamal grappled with what he truly wanted from himself. He wanted to be competent, seen as capable not just by others, but by himself. A small victory, an anchor of pride blossomed in his chest as he realized how vital his role had become. Abigail's breathing became easier under the mask, the chaos around them slowly morphing into manageable movements. But as calm washed over the cabin like a balm, Jamal's mind reeled. What would this mean when they landed? How would his peers view him? Would this redefine him? Or simply cast a yet unwanted spotlight on the uncomfortable truth of their sudden inequality? With renewed purpose igniting his spirit, Jamal recognized he was standing at the helm of a pivotal moment, a crossroads where he could lean into this new certainty or retreat back into the shadows of doubt. The whisper of overwhelm threatened to return, but he pushed against it. The flight continued through the turbulence, inside and out. Jamal felt his bravery solidify even as he grew aware of the deep commitment this act would demand of him moving forward. It was just the beginning of facing his fears, not just within those cabin walls, but beyond. The flight attendants thanked him as Abigail began to stabilize. "You did well, really well," one praised, but Jamal was already lost in contemplation of how this experience would shape his journey ahead. He shifted his gaze out the window, the clouds below appearing like cotton candy embers, but his mind swirled with shadows of self-expectation. As the plane's engines droned on, he felt the weight of the moment press against him, but a question lingered. What other challenges awaited him, ones beyond the confines of this flight? How would they shape his path? And as the plane pierced through the clouds, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that the real journey was just beginning. Jamal's mind struggled to reconcile the whirlwind of thoughts brewing inside him. He watched as the flight attendants seamlessly took control, their authority and training evident as they tended to Abigail. Each gesture, each command, felt like a reminder of the gap between him and those who had it all together. Yet within that uncertainty blossomed a boldness he had never fully embraced before. As the plane cruised at altitude, the adrenaline began to ebb, leaving space for a deeper reflection. Would this moment become just a fleeting headline, or could it forge a turning point in his life? The question burrowed into his consciousness, unraveling threads of ambition and fear. He had entered into this experience feeling small, but now, with a sense of purpose crystallizing within him, he envisioned pathways branching into the future. His gaze shifted between the passengers around him, now regained composure through the ordeal. They were no longer just strangers, they were witnesses, allies even if only temporarily. Jamal felt the tension diffuse further as conversations bubbled up among the adults, grateful chatter filling the cabin air. Some had shared nervous smiles, while others offered him appreciative nods. It was a stark contrast to the earlier chaos. Their acknowledgement ignited something within him, an inkling that perhaps he could do more than simply follow where life led him. He sensed the importance of building on this newfound courage. The scene of Abigail's fear gave way to introspection about what he truly wanted to manifest within his own life. It dawned on him that the skills he had honed every study session, every late-night online course had not only been for augmentation but preparation for moments just like this. He had not pushed through the anxiety and discomfort of learning just to dabble, he had been gearing up for a challenge. What now? He pondered, breathing in this moment of clarity. He yearned to cement his identity, to break beyond these transient feelings of heroism and transform them into a consistent character trait: reliable, resourceful, brave. But how? The impending landing soon loomed ahead, echoing the potential repercussions of this revelation. As the flight continued, Jamal utilized the time to think strategically. Each encounter with doubt demanded a corresponding response. He had embraced this instinct in the air, so why couldn't he carry it with him beyond these confines? Decisions awaited him, possibilities he had never previously considered. The thought of reclaiming his narrative inspired him. He could be proactive rather than reactive. Jamal envisioned turning this moment of unplanned valor into something sustainable. This wasn't merely about impressing peers or proving himself. It was about the deeper facets of challenge and impact, the need to contribute authentically. Could he advocate for others, become a leader who turned crises into opportunities? The very thought shook him, and his pulse quickened with anxiety for both the prospect and the unknown ahead, yet with each thump of his heart, so too came the gleam of excitement, the teasing whisper of purpose. How strange that a single incident could spark such change. He would emerge from this flight transformed, not just a hero in a moment, but a warrior in the ongoing battle against self-doubt. But as thoughts swirled, exhilaration began to clash with trepidation. Would he be able to leverage this experience into something greater upon landing? Would he confront the judgment of his peers or embrace the chance to educate them about vulnerability and strength? Just as the plane's wheels began descending, and the captain's voice cut smoothly through the air, a chilling realization unfurled: the quest for identity was far from over. There lay an even bigger challenge before him, and he would have to summon every ounce of his bravery to face it. With the ground approaching, Jamal braced himself. What awaited him on the other side of this transformative flight? The door of possibilities swung wide open, and with that, uncertainty. Flourished doubt and courage swirling like the clouds his mind had just pierced through, and as the plane readied for landing, the question echoed through him: would he rise to meet himself as he had done for Abigail, or would he fail to harness the momentum? As the plane touched down, a heavy thud resonated in Jamal's chest. The plane's wheels met the runway, but his own journey was just beginning. Disembarking, the rush of passengers parted around him, each focused on escaping the confines of the aircraft and returning to their routines. But Jamal lingered in the doorway, momentarily immobilized by the gravity of realization. He had performed an act of courage, but would it translate into meaningful change for himself? He stepped off the plane, inhaling the crisp airport air. A sensation washed over him, one that straddled triumph and vulnerability. The chatter of hurrying travelers echoed, yet his thoughts narrowed to one objective: cementing this experience into his identity. He felt a surge of resistance to merely going back to being who he had been before. Even the ground underfoot seemed to resonate with the possibility of something new. As Jamal wandered through the terminal, his mind raced through strategies. He had always been an observer, a follower, waiting for the right moment to enter a room or engage in conversation. But could he shift into a doer, one who shaped discussions rather than merely participating? The thought thrilled and terrified him. Nearing a popular coffee shop, he recalled the huddled group of schoolmates who often gathered inside. They were the same faces from class, a blend of silly camaraderie and implicit judgment, those he both wanted to prove himself to and feared being dismissed by. What if they learned about his actions during the flight? Would they admire him, or would they tease him, reducing his experience to an awkward anecdote? Suddenly, Jamal spotted them through the large glass windows, their laughter ringing out like a siren call. But hesitation gripped him. He could almost hear their familiar jibes about school projects, about how he was just a quiet guy in the back row. But that was before he had faced a challenge head-on, a challenge that had revealed a resolute core he hadn't known existed. He shifted his weight, the prospect of approaching them sparking an internal debate. He thought back to Abigail, how she had needed someone in a moment of crisis, and how he had risen to meet that need. Could he take that courage and apply it to situations outside of extraordinary circumstances? To leap into everyday life among his peers, as he stepped closer, his heart pounded. The voices pooled together and roared, making it more difficult to discern which ones were friendly and which carried the undertones of judgment. He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the swell of anxiety. But moments before he could cross the threshold, his phone buzzed in his pocket, a notification from social media flaunting an article about his flight experience. Unexpected heroism, it read, showcasing the chaotic episode that had unfolded. A wave of panic rippled through him. This was publicity he had never anticipated. Would they see him differently now? Was this the moment that would change everything? The room spun with possibilities, and he wrestled with the implications. This was both validation and scrutiny. Would he seize the opportunity to reshape his story in a way that elevated his path, or would he retreat into the shadows, fearful of missteps? The sound of laughter pulled Jamal from his thoughts. The courage he felt before scattered like ashes in the wind. Could he find a way to communicate his experience to them, genuinely and without pretension? With steady resolve, Jamal stepped inside, knowing his journey had merely begun. Revelations churned within him, a blend of excitement and apprehension focused toward personal growth. He would need to navigate this new terrain carefully. But as he entered the realm of his peers, one question pressed heavily upon him: could he redefine his narrative, or would he let old fears dictate his story once again? Jamal took a deep breath as he entered the coffee shop, a cacophony of chatter washing over him, stimulating his nerves. He spotted his group at a table in the center, laughter intertwining with curious glances in his direction. Their eyes flickered toward him, momentarily pausing as he stepped forth, cradling the weight of their potential judgments. This was new territory, an arena where he'd either elevate himself or retreat into anonymity. As he shimmied into the brew of youthful banter, his mind warred with doubt. The article was already turning into a vessel for expectations, and he could feel the weight of their pending evaluation stinging his resolve. Could he frame this narrative in a way that showcased his growth, or would they merely label him as the hero they had seen in headlines? "Hey, look who it is!" Matt, the boisterous one of the group, grinned widely, drawing attention like a magnet. "The man of the hour. Heard you did something crazy on the plane. What gives?" Every ounce of Jamal's previous courage felt pinned against the wall of the room. He wasn't sure how to navigate this dance between vulnerability and bravado. Part of him wanted to deflect, to downplay his actions, to slide into the role of the unremarkable student known for his quiet presence. But another part yearned to claim his narrative, to articulate his growth. Before he could filter his thoughts, the words began to tumble out. "I didn't do anything special. I just reacted. It's about looking out for others, right?" Their laughter faded into a more contemplative silence, as if his words contained gravity. The moment felt pivotal, threading a connection to both past insecurities and emerging courage. He could sense a shift, as if they were veering into an uncharted course with him no longer reliant on outdated perceptions. "Still sounds pretty heroic to me," Maya interjected, her tone softer, yet charged. "Not everyone would stepped up like that." Jamal's pulse quickened at her recognition. Maybe this was his moment, an opportunity to rise above the routine self-description he often embraced. He leaned forward, searching their faces. "It's funny. I always thought I was the guy who just blended in. But, I think," he paused, clarifying his thoughts, "I think this experience taught me something about stepping into the light, rather than just watching it." The table fell into an absorbing silence, and his words hung in the air, vibrating with authenticity. He watched as a few heads nodded, surprised understanding reflected in their eyes. For the first time, Jamal felt seen, not merely for his awkwardness but for his potential, but just as he soaked in this liberating moment, Sarah, the most outspoken of the group, who usually thrived on sarcasm, leaned back with an eyebrow raised. "You do realize you're not just some quiet kid anymore. You've opened a door for everyone to see you differently. How do you feel about that?" A subtle shift surged through Jamal. He could feel the challenge implicit in her tone. This prompted him to delve deeper. Self-exploration had its risks, especially when aligned with vulnerability among peers. "Honestly, I'm scared. What if this is a fluke? What if I can never be this version of myself again?" Laughter returned, but it was accompanied by something more, a shared understanding of the complexities of teenage identity. Jamal felt the atmosphere change again. It was palpable, electric. Maybe this was the crucible he needed to shape his character moving forward, yet as they drew closer, he realized they were all just figuring themselves out, too. Could he maintain this newfound resolve amid everyday challenges, maintaining the courage born from the flight incident? Would he falter when confronted with the mundane issues of school life? With his heart pounding, Jamal leaned back in his chair, a swirling mix of hope and trepidation pooling in his chest. The conversation was light, but the stakes felt substantively heavier. The unfamiliar tension coated the air around him. The moment felt like a fragile bridge connecting two versions of himself. Would he embrace this new narrative, cementing his metamorphosis into a person of agency and conviction? Or would he shy away from the demands that came with authenticity, avoiding the deep-seated fear that seemed ready to pounce? As laughter resumed and conversations unfolded, Jamal's gaze drifted toward the window, the world bustling beyond. Emerging tempestuous feelings of possibility and hesitation built inside him. He sensed that this was not merely a pivotal moment, it was the beginning of a deeper exploration into who he was and who he could become. But it dawned on him that external adventures paled in comparison to the internal quests that loomed ahead. This was far from over. The real challenge lay in how he would confront life beyond the flight, an inevitable confrontation that lingered just around the corner. Would he stand firm, or let life's currents sweep him away once more? The days that followed his moment at the coffee shop lingered like a half-remembered dream in Jamal's mind, both surreal and electric. He had faced his peers, stepped into his story, but now he felt the pressure of that very revelation pressing heavily on his chest. He couldn't escape the mounting expectations, both from his friends and himself. As each day slid into the next, Jamal was more aware of the whispers that trailed him in the halls, a blend of admiration and reverence tinted with the curious lens of youthful judgment. His classmates seemed to weave an image of him that he wasn't quite ready to inhabit entirely. A hero still felt out of reach. Could he maintain the narrative, or would it slip into the past, swallowed by the complexities of a normal high school life? His mind raced when he ventured into a new territory, the student government, where bright faces gathered with ambitious ideas. As he entered the multi-purpose room for the meeting, the mood was electric with possibilities. Jamal felt misplaced, a lone ship submerged in a sea of stormy aspirations. His heart clamored as he remembered Sarah's question: how would he handle this new light cast upon him? "Hey, Jamal! You're here!" shouted Caitlin, a bubbly personality and the current president. "We could use your energy. We're planning something big for the student body, and your recent adventure has inspired a lot of people." Her enthusiasm swirled into Jamal's uncertainty, igniting both excitement and dread. They wanted him to speak, to lead, but the thoughts of doubt circled his mind like birds of prey. "I'm not sure I really belong here," he managed to mumble. The words felt flimsy and out of place amidst the fervor that surrounded him. "Nonsense!" Caitlin shot back with a warmth that made Jamal's chest swell slightly with defiance. "Leadership is about growth. You've already shown us you can rise to challenges. The plane incident proves it. Embrace this share of yours." But what would that mean for him in the face of everyday struggles? He could feel the invisible expectations in the air like a thick fog that threatened to choke him. Hadn't he just revealed his vulnerability? How could he now be thrust into a spotlight that felt too bright, too unforgiving. As discussions unfolded, Jamal felt waves of anxiety clash against flickers of determination. They started brainstorming ideas for a school event promoting community, but in his mind, the notion of personal challenge morphed into a where he was tested far beyond what he faced on the airplane. This was about facing himself in front of authority figures, teachers, and fellow students who had yet to see the hero Jamal was supposed to embody. That in a quiet moment, Jamal caught sight of Maya on the far side of the table, her piercing gaze encouraging him. He took a breath and spoke, though his voice wavered slightly. What if we use this event to challenge ourselves? To confront what keeps us from stepping up. It needs to resonate somehow, connect back to what I learned that day on the plane. Murmurs of approval flickered around the table, and his heart raced. Could this be the collision of his fear and resolve? With every hesitant word, he began weaving an intricate idea that drew from his experience while forging a path toward agency. What if he could use this platform not just to shine, but to also explore the shadows that trailed behind him? Yet, as he began crafting this narrative, a gnawing fear surfaced. Would he be able to deliver? What if this ambition proved beyond his capabilities? As thoughts swirled, Jamal felt an identity growing within him, but he questioned whether that desire was, in fact, he stepping into the light or stumbling towards disaster. With each idea rendered from the depths of his aspirations, the responsibility settled onto his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He felt the urgency build, the burden of potential success and failure looming close. In this tumultuous mix of doubt and determination, Jamal knew he was approaching a pivotal turning point. He would have to confront the ultimate test of his courage, not just to shine, but to lead and face whatever shadows of doubt intertwined with his newfound identity. He glanced around the room, inspiration coursing through him. But hovering in the air was a question only he could answer. Would the inner hero prove true when it truly mattered, or would the whispers of panic pull him back into the shadows? The real test was just beginning, and he couldn't shake the feeling that obstacles were lurking ahead. As the meeting drew to a close, Jamal felt the weight of silence fall around him like a curtain that had yet to fully unveil the drama of the stage. Eyes lingered upon him, each gaze a mix of expectation and curiosity, as if he were an untamed horse ready to gallop through the wild fields of possibility. He had momentarily dared to voice a vision, but now uncertainty gnawed at him, whispering insidious thoughts that threatened to drown out the flicker of resolve he had summoned. "Remember, everyone," Caitlin interjected, trying to wrap up the meeting, "let's take Jamal's idea home and brainstorm how we can build on it. We'll make this something powerful." As the clamor of chairs scraping against the floor erupted in his ears, Jamal stood frozen, wrestling against the tide of his emotions. While everyone flowed toward the exits, he found himself standing still, wrestling with the monologue playing in his mind. Why had he spoken? Why had he dared to step forward? Maya approached him slowly, her eyes harboring an unspoken solidarity. "You did good, Jamal. Seriously. They listened, and you sparked something." "Did I?" His words came out sharper than intended. What if it was a fluke? What if they just saw me as that kid who got lucky on a plane? This feels different. I feel out of my depth. Maya shook her head firmly. They see more than just that. It's not luck, you have insights that are valuable. You're more than that moment, Jamal. You're more than a headline. He lowered his gaze, tracing the lines on the floor. Her words reverberated through him, introspection surged in waves, rhythms of fear crashing against a hardened wall of determination. What would it look like to break through that wall? Should he even try? He left the room, mixing with the flow of students in the hallway, his mind a whirlpool of compounded doubts and flickering hopes. Jamal grasped for time alone, longing for clarity. He ambled to the empty library, where the air was filled with the comforting scent of worn pages and whispered thoughts. Settling into a secluded corner, he unfolded a notebook that had served as a reservoir for scattered ideas and sketches of plans. With his pen poised, he began to free the storm within him. The very act of writing became a release, each word confronting the chaos swirling around his self-doubt. What keeps us from stepping up? He scribbled, echoing the pulse of his earlier question. Is it fear? Is it vulnerability? Is it losing the image of who we think we should be? Every inscription illuminated a facet of his tumultuous thoughts, but the deeper he delved, the more he felt the tug of a familiar anxiety clenching around him. What did it mean to lead? Was leadership really about taking large, grand steps that often seemed reckless, or was it a journey worth every uncertain inch? A sudden clamor broke through the haze of his concentration, students bustling and laughing as they left their classes. Jamal glared at the door, warmth and energy pouring in, drawing a stark contrast to the cold emptiness he felt within. Instinctively, he pressed a fist to the table, combating the desire to sink deep into despair drawing him back. Maybe it wasn't about becoming a hero overnight. Maybe it was about finding small ways to prove to himself that he could navigate the vulnerability that came with inauthenticity. As a burgeoning leader, it wouldn't be about perfection but rather persevering through moments of doubt and insecurity. Determined now, he stood, ready to embrace the homespun challenges ahead. But as he departed the library, an unsettling thought lurked in the shadows of his resolve. He was beginning to realize that facing his own fears might be just as daunting as the external hurdles he envisioned. Would he have the courage to confront not only the expectations of others but also the truth within himself? The next phase of his journey began to take shape. With every heartbeat, he felt the gravity of the challenge ahead. As he reached for the door, heart racing, the question coiled tightly in his chest, resonating with a profound urgency. What if the true test awaited him not just in leading others, but in leading himself when the moment came to confront what truly lay within? Jamal stepped outside the library, the noise of the bustling students fading into a distant hum. Each footfall felt heavier than the last, the weight of his thoughts anchoring him in place. The sunny afternoon light felt both warm and harsh, illuminating the uncertainties lurking in the back of his mind. As he moved toward the courtyard, he couldn't shake the feeling that a reckoning was approaching. The fountain in the center sparkled, a few students sitting on its edge, laughing and chatting. Jamal watched them, an unsettling mixture of envy and desire stirring within him. They seemed so easy in their camaraderie, seemingly free from the complexities that suffocated him. But as he leaned against a nearby tree, he felt a pull in his gut, a searing determination to find his own clarity amongst the chaos. He pressed his palm to the rough bark, grounding himself. What if the confrontation he had to face was more than the acceptance of his peers? What if it extended to confronting misconceptions he held about his own capabilities? Each notion felt like a pebble lodged painfully in his shoe, but just as he contemplated how to push against those barriers, Caitlin's voice rang out behind him, "Jamal. Hey, there you are." Her enthusiasm made him straighten. "Hey, Caitlin," he replied, forcing a smile even as doubts murmured in his head that he didn't belong. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I really think if we flesh out your idea, it could be groundbreaking," she continued, oblivious to his internal turmoil. "Would you be up for a small brainstorming group with me, Maya, and a few others later?" The prospect both thrilled and terrified him. It was an opportunity, a chance to bring his idea to life, to take a lead rather than just follow. But self-doubt flickered at the edges of his resolve. I guess so," he stammered, the uncertainty barely concealed in his voice. Would this meeting bring forth his voice, or would it trigger the damning fear of inadequacy once more? "Great. I'll message you the details." Caitlin's bright smile turned into a knowing grin as if she could sense his hesitation. "You're getting there, Jamal. Sometimes, you just have to jump in." As she walked off to greet another friend, Jamal felt the weight of her words settle awkwardly in his stomach. She had faith in him, but could he trust that faith himself? He was a maze of contradictions, yearning to break free but terrified of stepping into the light. That he took a deep breath, realizing that he had to confront this head-on rather than hide in the shadows. Perhaps this was the moment he had been unwittingly preparing for, not just a meeting, but the chance to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about leadership and himself. Inspiration surged as he returned to his corner, lifting the notebook once more. Ideas poured out of him, but beneath the excitement lurked reminders of how easily he could fail. Uncertainty intertwined with hope, creating a fabric that seemed fragile yet resilient. What if he put everything he had into this? Would it crumble, or could it take flight, with every line he wrote, he discovered hidden capabilities he never knew he possessed. He started to weave in his own story, struggles, moments of defiance against failure, and the quiet triumphs. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the library's old stone in hues of orange and purple, Jamal's resolve hardened. He wasn't waiting for the approval of others. He was going to show them and himself that he could lead, even if the journey was fraught with discomfort. That he wasn't just preparing for a meeting anymore, he was preparing for a chance to redefine how he viewed his voice. Little by little, he began to break through the wall of fear that had so long shackled him, but as he closed the notebook, a nagging thought lingered in the recesses of his mind. Was he truly ready for this leap, or was the act of stepping forward merely a facade for a deeper sense of unpreparedness? The inquiry bounced around, threatening to destabilize his growing confidence. Jamal left the library, heart pounding as he faced the path ahead. The real battle lay not in external expectations but in navigating the tempest of his own self-doubt. What awaited him in that brainstorming session? Would he rise to the occasion, or would the ghost of inadequacy loom larger than ever? As Jamal walked across the campus, the bustling atmosphere felt almost surreal against the backdrop of his racing heart. The chatter of students and the rustling of leaves blended into a cacophony that mirrored the turmoil inside him. Each stride brought him closer to the room where the brainstorming session awaited, but also closer to grappling with the fears gnawing at him. What if he stumbled over his words? What if his ideas were shot down? The thought felt like a heavy anchor pulling him down into uncertainty. Yet, as he neared the meeting room, something flickered within him, a spark ignited by Caitlin's faith that perhaps he could do this. Jamal inhaled deeply, summoning every ounce of courage he could muster. He couldn't let the fear of failure hold him captive any longer. It was time to confront the shadows that threatened to overshadow him. Pushing through the door, he was greeted by the warm smiles of Caitlin, Maya, and a couple of others he recognized but didn't know well. They were seated casually around a table cluttered with notebooks and energy drinks, an easy camaraderie evident in their light banter. Jamal felt the weight of his insecurities pressing down heavier than ever, convinced he was an imposter in such company. "Jamal. Glad you made it." Caitlin waved him over enthusiastically. The irritation of self-doubt clutched at his gut, yet he managed a smile, grateful for her genuine welcome. "Thanks for having me," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. They quickly got to work, tossing around ideas with an energy that was contagious. As they brainstormed, Jamal contributed his thoughts, observations he considered in his notes. Each time he spoke, he felt the tension in his shoulders loosen slightly, a space of possibility opening up within him. However, every positive thought was met with a piercing voice in his mind that churned criticisms. "Why would they want to hear your ideas? You're just another student." But he fought back against that voice. With each idea shared, a small victory emerged, as though he was chipping away at the bulwark of self-doubt. Then, it happened. Caitlin suggested an online campaign to promote their project. It was clear it would require a cohesive leader to rally the group, a role he felt utterly unprepared for. He could almost see the flickering spotlight shining elsewhere, on someone else far more capable. But there he was, the universe urging him to step into that light. "Maybe we could assign lead roles," he proposed, surprising himself with the confidence lacing his words. The group nodded, and Jamal felt a warmth swelling inside as others began discussing who could take the point on various components. "Jamal, what about you?" Maya suggested, catching him off guard. "You're already bringing great insights. Maybe you could lead the social media strategy." The room grew quiet as their eyes turned expectantly to him. Jamal's pulse quickened, and a whirlwind of thoughts clamored for attention. This was not the moment he intended to rise. It was unforeseen, unsettling. In his mind, the doubts clawed viciously, threatening to sink him back into self-doubt. What if he failed? What if the task was too much? But it dawned on him, this was the very opportunity he had been waiting for. The pause felt expansive. He could either retreat into the safety of anonymity or embrace the role he had for too long believed was beyond his reach. With a shaky breath, he seized the moment. "Okay, I'll do it," he heard himself say. The words came out with more firmness than he anticipated. As realization washed over him, a rush of exhilaration mixed with dread battled within. It felt like plunging into icy water. The shock was immediate, yet invigorating. The meeting continued to swirl around him as ideas flowed, his tasks clearly laid out, yet his focus unfurled elsewhere. He grappled with the magnitude of his decision. Had he truly just embraced leadership? Or had he simply set himself up for a monumental fall? With the session wrapping up, Jamal left the room amidst the rousing send-offs of his teammates, but the echo of uncertainty shadowed him. This felt like a pivotal point, a stone cast into still water, setting off ripples that threatened to disrupt everything he thought he knew about himself. As he stepped outside, the sun dipped low in the horizon, painting the sky with hues of uncertainty and potential. Jamal knew there would be challenges ahead, but hidden within that storm was a path to self-discovery that he could no longer ignore. What heights or depths awaited him on this new journey of leadership? Would he sink or soar? Only time would tell, and he was ready to face the unknown. Jamal stood at the precipice of change, his heart racing as he reflected on the transformation that had unfolded over the past few weeks. No longer was he the quiet observer in the corners of classrooms, he had stepped into the spotlight, embracing his identity as a leader and an advocate. Sitting at a table filled with his peers, he absorbed the buzzing energy of creativity and ambition pulsing through the group. Ideas he had once tucked away were now spilling forth with unexpected clarity, each contribution further solidifying his newfound confidence. His role in the brainstorming group had catalyzed a shift within him. No longer paralyzed by fear, Jamal reveled in pulling others into the fold, passionately discussing how their shared experiences could inform the campaign they were building. It was exhilarating to see his vision manifest, to witness teammates nodding and building upon his suggestions. Each affirmation felt like a brick in the foundation he was laying, an unwavering structure of growth that had once seemed impossible. Days turned into weeks, and every meeting reinforced Jamal's reaffirmed belief in himself. The weight of self-doubt began to lift, replaced instead by a burgeoning sense of purpose. When the event finally arrived, he stood in front of an attentive school audience, their curious eyes focused on him. He could feel the thrum of adrenaline, a reminder of the young man who had once doubted his ability to rise in moments that mattered. This was his moment to own, not just for himself but for everyone who had ever felt unseen or underestimated. Jamal delivered his speech with poise, articulating how his experience on the plane had transformed him from a hesitant teenager into a responsive leader wanting to connect with his peers. The applause that followed felt like a release of every burden that had clung to him, a powerful validation of his journey. As the event unfolded, the atmosphere flickered with engagement. Jamal watched as classmates shared their thoughts, opened up about their fears and aspirations without the usual veil of judgment. He navigated this heartfelt exchange, feeling a sense of camaraderie and respect he had longed for during his formative years. No longer just the kid from the wrong side of town, Jamal had transformed into an inspiring young leader, recognized not just for his momentary heroism but for his consistent resolve to advocate for vulnerability and authenticity. His schoolmates now turned to him for guidance instead of seeing him as an afterthought. In the days following the event, whispers of admiration followed him through the hallways. Students approached him with gratitude, eager to collaborate and share their own dreams. With steadfast conviction, he encouraged them to embrace not only their strengths but also their vulnerabilities. Jamal had finally established a safe space where his peers could express themselves fully, an achievement that resonated deeply with his core values. The recognition crystallized his transformation. He received an award from the student council for his outstanding leadership, but more than accolades, he relished the respect and trust he had earned from others. Each interaction reinforced the notion that he was more than capable. Jamal stepped outside one afternoon, the sun warming his back. As he gazed at the expansive sky, he was filled with contentment and gratitude. He understood that leadership was not just about the spotlight, it was rooted in the genuine connections and unwavering support he offered to those around him. The narrative had shifted. His journey was not defined by the shadows of self-doubt but illuminated by the path of resilience and growth. The fears that once haunted him were now tools to elevate others, and Jamal had become the bridge between his past uncertainties and a future teeming with possibilities. He thrived not only as an individual but as a beacon of hope, demonstrating that true strength lies in vulnerability, compassion, and a commitment to lift others on their journey. As he moved forward, Jamal embraced the notion that every experience would forge new challenges. He would welcome those tests, determined to face them with the courage he had cultivated. His metamorphosis had equipped him to navigate life beyond the colored walls of his school, each step a thrilling and welcomed adventure. He was ready for his future, for more impactful connections, and for the continuous embrace of growth. This was the moment to own his story. Now is the time for you to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your thoughts and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of transformation. Don't hesitate to show your support because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of doing so.